And now, for this special moment, I'd like to introduce to you Stephanie Foster, who is a champion of women in technology. She is now on our board. She was recently elected to the 40 under 44 ETA class of 2019, which we're very proud of. And also, she's very fluent in 3 languages: English, let's see if I get this right, French, Creole, and now she's learning geek. Let's give a warm welcome.
A millennial to boot. Stephanie, we're so proud of you and proud to have you, and congratulations on your award, Top 40 Under 40.
All right, so good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Women in FinTech panel. I'm very excited to be hosting this event today as a new founding member of Women in Wireless. And before we get into the panel, I just want to take some time to share a little bit about FinTech and what it is and what space is it playing in and how important it is here to the city of Atlanta and the state of Georgia. So with that, what is FinTech? So FinTech is everywhere. It's in our everyday lives. It goes beyond the mobile app on your phone. It's more than that. It's how you pay your mortgage. It's how you invest your money. It goes through insurance, blockchain. It's how you go to apply for a loan at your bank today. So FinTech is everywhere in our world. It's here to stay. And I always joke that if you work in payments, you're going to have a job for life because people will always have to pay for things. What's going to change is how we pay for things. So if you're interested in a career that's not going to go anywhere anytime soon, join us in FinTech. Next, when we think about what would be the largest financial services company in the world, you think of a bank, right? We think of banks. They're worth more money than everybody else. Well, Ant Financial is a FinTech out of China, and they've been around for less years than I've been married, and I've been married for 6 years. And Ant Financial is currently the 10th largest financial service firm in the world in terms of value. They're currently worth over $150 billion, and they were only created in 2014. That's how powerful the FinTech space is, and again, it's here to stay. We're always going to have to pay for things. It's how we pay for it that's going to change, right? And then last but not least, the importance, just to highlight the importance of FinTech to here in Atlanta. So there are over 120 FinTech companies based here in Atlanta or have large operations in Atlanta that employ over 37,000 people here locally, processing over $128 billion every year, worth over $5 trillion in purchase power, generating over 70 billion revenue every single year in the state of Georgia. So FinTech is exactly here in Atlanta. So I just wanted to share these numbers before we get into the panel. And I do want to thank all the ladies here today for saying yes to my call when I was pulling this panel together. I really appreciate you being here. And special shout out to Gail and Nicole, who drove all the way from Columbus to be with us tonight. So let's go ahead and get started. I'll introduce Gail, and she'll introduce herself and the rest of the panel. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. I am just honored, and as Stephanie said, the drive was 3 hours, but it was well worth it to see all of these beautiful faces here today, and of course the panelists here. Real briefly, I work at TSYS. I have been there for 23 years. I work both on the business as well as the IT side. I was in IT for approximately 10 years before I transitioned into my new role as the new Senior Diversity Inclusion Officer for TSYS. It is a new program at TSYS, but I like to think that we're not behind. We're just getting started. And I have the wonderful support of our president and all of the senior executives there at TSYS to make it successful. So very, very honored and happy to be on this journey. As you were here today, several of the panelists also had some of their career time at TSYS as well. So as you can see, the FinTech industry, you do tend to go full circle at some point. So again, very, very excited, and thank you all so much. So I will start here with the very first opportunity. Do you want us to go down and actually introduce each of ourselves, or just start with the questions? Okay, so Tanya.
Hello, everyone. I'm Fiserv Proud Associate, based out of our Alpharetta office here. I'm Tanya Hugler, Director of Multi-Channel Marketing and Analytics, and I've been with the company for 2 years now on a great adventure and great journey through this time of change, and happy to be here with these amazing women. So thank you, panelists, and thank you, audience.
Hi there, I'm Sandra Blair. I'm responsible for financial institution product strategy at FIS. A little bit over $3 billion in revenue on our FI payment side of the house. I did start my payments career at TSYS 20-some years ago on the technology side of the house. So thrilled to be here.
Good evening, ladies. I'm Valera Wilson. Can you hear me?
No. Push it up. This, push it up.
Can you hear me now? There we go. Sorry about that. Minor tech glitch. Valera Wilson. I am Director of Marketing at First Data, where I specifically focus on our SMB space, which is definitely a huge space, even particularly for FinTech, where I lead our cross-sell and retention campaigns and execution. So everything focuses on how do we continue to deliver value to our small business merchants. I've been with First Data for a couple of years. Prior to that, I was in a global marketing role at Verifone. And then prior to that, I was actually at AT&T in their wireless and mobility space. So definitely in the tech space, just moved around a bit. So I'm excited to be here with all you wonderful ladies and with all of you ladies this evening.
Hi, I'm Nicole Baxby. I'm the account director at Featurespace, which is a machine learning fraud solution company. I worked there for the last 2 years. I was their first American employee. They're based in Cambridge in the UK. And before that, I worked at TSYS and started my career there in a number of roles, the last of which was managing their professional services team in the UK.
Fantastic. Thank you all so very much. Can we give them a round of applause? A lot of years and experience standing up on this podium here today, so thank you all so very much. We'll go ahead and get started with our questions. Many organizations are starting to undergo the modernization, transformation, and digital transformation. What do you see in your line of business as the main driver of modernization in the payment industry? And so, Tanya, I will start with you.
Our CEO talks, our fearless CEO of Fiserv talks about that nothing changes faster than consumer expectations. So as we think about the modernization of payments, it's really the folks that are using the products, those end consumers, that are the primary drivers of bringing to the forefront their needs and wants that are helping move the payments industry into a space that's unprecedented.
Very good. Thank you. Valera, share your thoughts.
Sure. So obviously, First Data has a huge line of products or solutions from institution to enterprise level to SMB. And I focus on the small business market. So when you think about it, it's just this concept of instant and mobile, I think, are the two drivers. And if you think about it, I mean, business owners are no different than you and I. They want the same instantaneous experience that they experience in other channels in their daily life. So it becomes of, hey, instant funds, for example. I want my money today. I don't want to wait for it to process and settle. I need it now so I can pay my staff today, or, I can buy inventory, things like that. So just this concept of instant, I need it now, and also mobile. So I need to be able to track my business when I'm not, at my brick and mortar. How is it doing? How sales have done? So just that concept, I think, is really driving this consumerization, but it translates into even on the FinTech side with merchants.
Absolutely, absolutely. Sandra, would you like to add to that?
No, I mean, I would agree, certainly in terms of consumer expectation. And really, so when you think about banking, banking is really becoming a verb these days, right? Not a noun. And consumers expect to interact with their financial institutions the way they interact with Uber. And so the financial institutions really need to either collaborate with the fintechs or move faster so that their consumers aren't going to the fintechs for those fast and easy solutions and only using their bank when they have to use their bank.
Right, right. Nicole.
So exactly what my fellow panelists said, I would add, when I look at the payment space, the real innovation is coming when you look at China and India. So if you go to China right now, you are not going to use a credit card, you're not going to use cash, you're going to make a payment using Alipay or WeChat Pay and scan your QR card to buy fruit out of street vendors so anyone can become a merchant. Yeah. So that's really exciting, and I think we're probably a little ways away of seeing that come over into the US market. And then also in my space, in fraud particularly, we're seeing a lot of what's driving our customers is PSD2 and also 3D Secure 2.0.
Very good. Well, you ladies definitely shared the transformation and the journey that many of the organizations on, but you started to touch into the very next question around what are some of the biggest risks that your companies face in that fintech industry, especially as we talk around the data breaching and security around that data. So Sandra, I will start with you on that.
Sure. As a prior CIO, I know the pain points here pretty well. I think really the risks, especially around data breaches, and as we start talking about open banking now that it's easier to interface with different entities and third-party entities through APIs, you really have a really hard time understanding your ecosystem, right? So in terms of security, you may think you're connected to 10 entities, but those 10 entities may be connected to 200 different entities, so they really become part of your ecosystem. And so it's really critical to not think this can't happen to me, and to make sure that you're being proactive, and you really have to throw people and money dedicated to it to ensure that you're predictive in terms of fraud and breaches in today's kind of open ecosystems that we're building in the fintech and financial services world.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Nicole, what are some of the risks and challenges in your company?
So I grew up, again, at TSYS, and so it was drilled into us that every person is a risk, every employee is a risk, right. Because, just one click on a bad email and, you expose the company. So that's always been drilled in my head, but I think if I take a more holistic view, if you look at what's the biggest risk to banks and FIs, it's really not embracing that emerging technology and not the fraudsters are always evolving. And so if your company isn't embracing, machine learning and, as Sandra said, predictive technology to kind of, instead of looking at what's happened in the past and modeling based on that, but actually saying, I'm going to look at the individual, which represents 95% of transactions as good behavior, and model based off that, right. You're going to be in a far better position.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. Ms. Tanya.
Yes, so when I think about the space that I'm in, some of the biggest risks, as we said, consumer expectations are changing rapidly. And as companies, we want to make sure that we're delivering on that. And so sometimes we're moving at a rapid pace to continue to deliver on that change. But with that comes potential error. And whether that is the process that we're creating and or it's the people piece, that there is error in understanding what we're trying to do. And so if we think about how we are delivering our products and solutions, sometimes we need to take a step back just to be more cautious and conscious of what we are putting out in the marketplace. And it's not to deliver that the immediate gratification of that new solution, because that may not necessarily be what's of benefit as we continue downstream with what the implications are for our potential business, and making sure that we have the data security packaged around that product, as well as you had some. I think you were talking about, Nicole, the email clicks. Like, it could be something just so small around that. So how do you look at that big picture of all the potential issues or challenges that could come and the risks that are posed with that?
Yes, and we are all risk managers, but I would like to hear from you, Valera.
Sure. I mean, just a summary, I mean, a collection of all the points. I mean, if you think of it, it's just this challenge to deliver this frictionless experience, this, ideal customer experience. And if you think about it now, it's not just, I'm not just including sensitive financial information on my computer or my laptop. Now it's on my phone. Now it's on a wearable. Right. So you think about all these endpoints that you now have to secure, as a financial services provider. There's that tension between how do I deliver this great and ideal experience with protecting the information and securing the data. So I think there's just this constant tug of war.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you, ladies, and that was great touch points on what we can do around the areas of risk and data breaching, but that also brings leeway into the very next question that I have for you around the customer experience. With the customer experience, of course, there's more demand and it's higher, and more so now than ever before. What are some of the rises and the transformation of that customer experience that each one of your companies face today, and how they actually rise to that challenge? I will start with you, Ms. Sandra.
Sure. At FIS, we really, with all these expectations changing, are really focused on three major areas in terms of transformation. And I would start with the emerging technologies. So AI and cloud, I know we all talk about them all the time, but we're really in the infancy of really leveraging those technologies and being able to change consumer experiences. Also, the payments ecosystem is changing. So for those of you in this room that are part of that, and some, again, buzzwords, right? Real-time payments and cross-border payments are really going to create the necessity to have new rails and new communication vehicles, which is exciting, but also sometimes daunting in what that really means. And then also digitization. So as we've been talking about consumer expectations, I think you're going to see the advent of more digital banks and kind of a combination of technologies to deliver those consumer experiences.
Thank you. Nicole, what are some of the challenges for your customer experience today and the higher demand that is there?
So as Sandra just said on her last point, you're seeing, I mean, we're really in the, I guess what they're calling the fourth industrial revolution, which is all around technology. And so what you're seeing, especially with all these new challenger banks coming in, is everyone is rushing to innovate. And I think, from a feature space perspective, we're a relatively young company, founded in 2008. We don't have a lot of we haven't built on layers and layers of old infrastructure. We are able to innovate quickly, and I think our mission is to really help these larger companies, a lot of which are represented on the panel, help them protect their end customer against fraud and risk. So it's an interesting time to be in the FinTech space, but also still working with these, cornerstone payment service providers.
Right. Thank you. Tanya, share with us.
Yes. So with our company, we're doing a lot in terms of leveraging our technology, and some of it has been mentioned, so the AI and the machine learning, and we're in our infancy in understanding the actual output of our processes around this. Excuse me. And so we're trying to innovate around what we know with our legacy. We have some legacy systems, and then how we're trying to evolve those. So to Sandra's point, there's a few things thinking about how do we use those legacy systems, but in a way that's new and innovative, and then build off of some of our mobile technologies that we're getting into. And another way that we're leveraging technology is most of us are from the Atlanta area, and so Fiserv had a big announcement late in the fourth quarter. And so there's other ways that we can enhance our capabilities by increasing the value stream with various companies that we're working with, whether or not that's through partnership and or through acquisition.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you, ladies, for sharing your experience and perspective on the customer demand and how FinTech is actually measuring up to that. But I want to now shift into, of course, something that is definitely on all of our minds around the cashless society. You know, more and more of our consumer spend is mobile and on the internet and things of that nature. So what are some of the your thoughts around going completely 100% cashless and having a cashless society? So I would like to start with Valera on this one.
Sure. So I think of it, I mean, currency as a product, right? Mm-hmm. Just like, you know, Coke doesn't just have Coke. They have Dasani water. They've got so many different products for different needs, and I think it's the same concept. Right. All or nothing, I just don't think is the right approach. In some cases, obviously, the unbanked or underbanked might need that, and in a lot of developing countries or even advanced countries, you mentioned Nicole in China, being cashless is great, but there are still countries and transactions that people want cash. Right. And that's, I mean, at the end of the day, the still saying is cash is king, right? It doesn't matter how it looks, or it might be, you know, digitized, but cash is still king. So right. I think we'll always want cash. I personally would still want to see my cash at some point in time. I'm just saying, you know, certified check is always a good thing, right? Absolutely. You know, the money's there.
It is. So. Thank you, Valera. Miss Sandra.
Sure. I definitely agree with Valera. And I think if you think back upon the time 20 years ago when we said, oh, checks are going away, right? We're not going to have any more checks. Well, I just spent some time doing analysis on the checks in our country, and checks are declining, but checks are shifting, right? Checks are becoming higher dollar. Businesses still rely very heavily on checks. And the check processors, however, there's less of them, but they've just really consolidated. And to the unbanked and underbanked, you know, if you don't have a DDA account, you can't use Zelle, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, some of the new technologies that are coming up to be able to transfer money are still dependent on an FI in the background. And so cash will still be needed for folks in different segments of the market.
Thank you. Tanya.
Yeah, so recent announcement that Mercedes-Benz has gone completely cashless. So it's real, it's happening. And Cashless Society is just not realistic. And to Sandra's point, I mean, I think, and I don't have the raw numbers, but somewhere in the little bit less than 20% range is the underbanked and unbanked population. There are still people that get paid cash. There are still people that don't use a financial institution for their banking. I'm going to use banking as an adjective, banking need. Right. And so there's that one part of it, is that there is a society that actually needs the cash in order to just transact their daily lives. And then we recently in the news, there was also some conversation about Visa and MasterCard potentially increasing their interchange fees. Mm-hmm. So that is when you go to a merchant and you pay with your credit card, the merchant is paying a fee for us to use our card. Well, what happens when Visa and MasterCard increase those fees? That means inflation goes up. There's an economic impact to that. So maybe the smaller businesses might not necessarily be thrilled about having you come into their business and pay with a credit card because it's going to cost them more money. Or perhaps it's a motivator for us to carry a little bit more cash on us so that we don't have to have the inflationary pressure of what happens when the big companies, and if Visa and MasterCard decide to do it, it's going to happen. We know it will. Yeah. And then we ultimately pay the price as the consumers and ultimately the merchants.
Yeah. Thank you. Nicole.
So, unlike Valera, I am super excited about Cashless Society. I mean, from a personal perspective, I think I've got like $1.07 in my bag right now, and I never have cash. So, but I went on a trip with 17 women the other day, and they were like, "Oh, how do I pay you?" And I was like, "I will take Venmo, PayPal, Cash App, Zelle, like check, cash. Like I'll take whatever." And I feel like that's really, it's not about removing payment types. It's always going to be about adding, especially here in the U.S., where people get attached to the way they pay for things, and so it isn't about removing cash. It's just about adding different options. And I think when you look again, I'm sorry to mention it again, but if you look at emerging markets like India, having that reliance on mobile for the underbanked has really created democratized payments. So I'm excited about cashless and what it's doing on a global scale, but for the U.S. market, there will never be cashless, just like there's not checkless.
Hey, listen, and truth be told, I never carry cash. Just ask my husband. That's his biggest complaint. But yeah.
Well, thank you, ladies, for sharing so much of your knowledge and expertise in the areas of being cashless. Of course, you're all phenomenal in your careers and journeys and experience, and play such a significant part in the leadership and the footprint that each one of you have in your companies today. So I do want to share real briefly around some of the statistics where our Fortune 500 and 100 companies are going with their footprint of women today. So recently here, I completed a benchmark survey with Gartner, and just some of the statistics, even though remarkably, 60% of the women in a company are starting to advance, but it's still trending lower, or it's around the 30% mark. As more and more companies, of course, are diversifying their leadership, we're seeing that trend start to increase, which such companies as that are represented here today by these lovely ladies, as well as the one that I work for. So we are, and more of the diversity and inclusion programs with those companies are starting to be very aggressive about their statistics and their measurement toward making sure that more and more women are starting to progress into those leadership roles. So we're very excited about the overall trend of data that we're seeing, and there's still a lot of work to do, but it's starting to improve. And again, the benchmark survey that was shared and showing that the Fortune 500, 100, and 300 level companies are roughly around the same area with 60% to 30%, but we're starting to see that progress. So I actually want to get some perspective from the ladies here today on that, and if they would share that with us, and I'll start with Tanya. So there at Fiserv, what is some of the that you would like to share from a leadership perspective and share with these beautiful ladies to hear today?
Yes, so when we think about leadership in the fintech space in general, financial services was generally an industry that didn't have a lot of women, but there's a lot of opportunity, especially Stephanie showed those statistics about the payment space and the fintech companies that are here in Atlanta. We have a lot of great talent, gender aside.
Right.
So it's just helping other women. I understand and identify the career opportunities that are there within each of the respective companies, because it's not just that pure technical aspect, but there are so many different options and opportunities within all of our respective companies. Excuse me. And so I think the future is bright. We're moving in the right direction. Yeah. So that's a start. There are companies that have long-standing diversity and inclusion groups. So diversity, and we talked about this earlier, so diversity being the what. It's the mix, and the inclusion being the how. Now, how do we make that mix work? And I think as we've socialized that concept a little bit more, we've moved less from the what does our mix look like, what is our percentage, what is our ratio, to how do we better integrate all the folks that we have. Because when we think about diversity and the various layers of it, there are so many things that are included when you start saying, I'm a woman, and I'm this age, and I'm of this descent, and I have this organizational style. Like, all of a sudden, this is what makes us unique and different. Yeah. And so bringing that all together, I think, is a focus of companies that, and some may never have thought about it before, but they're just starting to think about it. As we see the Women in the Workplace study from McKinsey talking about how a more diverse workplace increases the bottom line. Like, there are financials that are saying that diversity improves our business. You can't challenge that when there is true fact research to prove it. So I'm very hopeful. And as more women support other women, I think this is, let's get everyone involved in the conversation about what great opportunities and careers we've had in the payment space. Yes. And when we generate those conversations and have those conversations, I think that there's great opportunity for us to connect, network, and understand the value that we can bring.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's right.
I don't know whether I need to say anything more. But I do agree that the future is bright. I think we have a long way to go, and especially coming through the technology paths in my career, I have to say that I was one of a few women, and the higher I moved through the organizations, the fewer and fewer women there were. So I am passionate about women helping women and making sure that we're holding each other up.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I would have to say ditto to everything. I think I had an opportunity, wonderful opportunity, to be selected for Money 2020's Rise Up program, the inaugural program last year, along with actually Nicole and Stephanie. And I think that initiative just symbolizes this tremendous focus now and recognition that there are so many awesome, capable, and talented women, and that there really needs to be a concerted effort, particularly in FinTech. I think you mentioned the McKinsey study, that we're definitely there. And when I think about diversity and inclusion, one of the things that was mentioned during this event conference was that diversity is kind of like being invited to the party, but then inclusion becomes being asked to dance. And so there's a difference, right? Yeah. There's a different feeling. And so I think women, we're here, and where there's diversity, but as you move up the ranks, as you mentioned, Sandra, you start to see less and less of us, and I think there's an opportunity for growth. But I'm definitely excited, and I'm hopeful because there's so many initiatives like this, Money 2020, and other large industry events that are being intentional, and I think that's the word, being intentional about what can we do to aggressively and actively promote women. So I'm definitely excited, and you know, I'm sure the sky's the limit as we continue to just showcase our skills and get those opportunities and platforms.
Absolutely.
So agree 1,000% with everything you guys said, and I'll just add a couple of points. One is, you know, you can pick your boss. So if you aren't happy with either, you know, if you're asking for opportunities and you're not getting them, then go find your boss, and that's what I did. I was at a conference and I saw this rock star CEO, and I just thought, I don't know anything about fraud, but I want to work for her. And so I asked if I could work for her, and she said yes. So that's my CEO, Martina King, who is just, if you look her up, she's amazing. Martina King, we are hiring. But you know, I think the thing that I have learned the most in the last 6 months, and there's a statistic, and you guys have probably all heard it, where you know, if there's a job application, men are going to look at that and go, well, I've heard of the company, and you know, like I've got about 10% of those skills. I'm going to go for it. But women, we disqualify ourselves, and so we go, oh no, I need 80% before I'm going to go for it. Yeah. And that's the problem, and there's a lot of problems. That's not the only one. But I think one of the solutions is here in the room. So women being around other women and just kind of realizing that we're all having similar experiences, and I think that's, you know, one of the things that I got from Rise Up was my Rise Up sisters, you know. So Valera and Stephanie, you meet a network of women who bring you along in the journey. Right. So it's about finding women who can be your mentors or your network or your sponsor, and holding those women close, and then going, we're going to rise up together, and so we're going to bring each other along. You know, if I'm on a committee to find a speaker, I'm going to go to my network of women and go, I know she knows about that, and please pick her. You know what I mean? And so it's about never finding a reason to be competitive with women, but just bringing them along and making sure that they're included.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Aren't these ladies amazing? Thank you all. So we're going to do, just here briefly, a couple quick pro quos and some speed round, just to lighten it up and have a little fun. You've heard some amazing statistics and information, but we want to get to know them just a little personally here. So, and they're not shy, I promise you. So we're going to have just a couple speed round, quick lightning speed questions, and give you your response on that. So, and I'll do it really, really fast here. In the FinTech industry, friend, foe, or banks? Tanya.
Friend.
Sandra.
Frenemies.
Friends.
Valera.
I mean, we're FinTech, so it's a friend.
Very good. Guilty pleasure. Sandra.
5-star hotels.
Valera. Valera.
Luxury handbags.
Nicole. Guilty pleasure.
Breakfast in bed on Saturday, brought to me by my husband, and staying in bed as long as I can with my dogs.
Tanya, guilty pleasure.
I'm with Sandra, but traveling.
Traveling. All right. Dream job. Valera.
Gosh, I'm a marketing nerd and I love technology. I've been in the space across tech, so I would definitely have to say, a senior level, C-suite marketing role, marketing technology.
Fantastic. Nicole.
So if I won the lottery, I'd rescue a bunch of baby goats, but I'm probably not. So I would say Chief Revenue Officer.
Awesome. Sandra.
Professional tennis player.
Kindred spirits here.
Yep.
Kindred spirits. And Tanya. Dream job.
Because you said dream job, it's a winning the lotto thing for sure. Peace Corps.
Very good. Awesome, awesome. And I'm in lineage with Sandra. I would love to be a pro tennis player as well. So if that was
on the
my
senior
dream
tour.
job.
We'll go on the senior tour together.
That's right.
You are not that old, ladies.
Doubles here, right? All right. Well, that concludes our time as far as the panelists and questions. We will actually take questions from the audience. Okay, I just have to repeat the questions because we are live streaming and so people can actually hear. But the question is, as I paraphrase it, what are your thoughts on PCI compliance as we are in the digital space? As it applies to small business.
Sure. Well, one, it's definitely important, and I would say necessary, just from a security and compliance and risk perspective. Obviously, First Data does have a number of PCI compliance solutions. I would say I'm not sure if you are working with them from a sales perspective or what capacity, but I would say certainly that there are a number of solutions that you might want to walk them through. And I mean, happy to chat afterwards and connect you to the right people, but definitely it's something that, even as a small business, that becomes important. Because I almost think of it as assurance or insurance, if you will. So.
Thank you. Another question. Yes, sir. So the question is, how big of a talent shortage is there in the FinTech industry outside of the companies that are represented today, some of the largest? And Sandra?
Yeah, sure. It actually is a problem for us. We may seem like really big companies that are fully staffed, but we're not. And FinTech, and because there's so much competition here too, right? We're constantly fighting for talent, right? So there's things beyond salaries and cultural things that we all need to focus on in order to keep talent. Part of the FinTech Atlanta group also, and the talent group, which I happen to be a member of, we're putting together and working with the university system here in Georgia, both the public as well as the private universities, and putting together actually FinTech curriculums. So people will graduate from school with either a concentration, probably that'll be the beginning of it, but eventually actually a degree in FinTech. I think many of you that are in the industry, we spend a lot of time when we first get folks into our companies and do kind of the payments 101, what is FinTech, because we need to teach people, right? You hire really smart people, but there's no curriculums around FinTech. So that's really the focus, so that we'll have a pipeline of folks coming to school. It is. It is. So right now, we're all doing whatever we can do to hold on to the talent that we have. I think to me, it's cultural more than anything else. I think there's a lot of studies that it's not about the salary, right? It's about the teams they're working with and what makes, you may be able to answer this a little bit better than I can, but in terms of what makes people stay at companies, it's more to do with the people around them and the culture than it is about how much they're getting paid or what their bonuses are.
Absolutely. And I know, Nicole, you wanted to add to that.
From a smaller,
Sure.
because we, Atlanta and the Georgia Chamber, and the Atlanta Chamber specifically really attracted us to locate our North America head office to Atlanta for the huge amount of FinTech companies that are based here, Stephanie mentioned. And so that's a pro that there's a huge pipeline of graduates and people with experience, but it also means it's very competitive, and especially for a company like FeatureSpace, where we need data scientists and implementation engineers and people with deep payments backgrounds. So it is tough. It is really tough to find the caliber of employees we're looking for. It's very competitive, and we're aware of it. Like Sandra said, and I think Gail said, it is so based on your corporate culture. So some people are wanting to join a big established payments company. Some graduates really are looking for that fun, startup feel. And so that's, I think, what draws them to FeatureSpace. We definitely try to capitalize on it, even though we've got 210 employees now. So we're rapidly losing startup status. But we do lunches in the Cambridge office. We do communal lunches, so free lunch. Everything's in the fridge. Just grab it, make yourself a sandwich. And we do something similar in our Atlanta office, where the food's all paid for, and then on Friday we order in. But it's really just about having building a culture where people want to work there. And so I think FeatureSpace has done that, because if you see us at a conference and you see our leadership, you want to work there.
That's right.
I would jump right in there, Gail.
Please do.
As we talk about culture, because that's really the heart of it. And if we think about our business and we have NPS scores, the Net Promoter scores, well, we need the same to make sure that our associates are recommending our company as a great place to work. And we all live in Atlanta, so I don't need to go very far in this conversation to say that flexibility is really important.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or amen. Flexibility is important. Yeah. Traffic and getting around is not all that easy. It's a really big city, and it's a sprawling city. So I come from New York. It's a little bit different. And so here you could work in Midtown, but you can live in Duluth, and then that's a significant portion of your life that you are dedicating to the traffic, frankly, and to that time spent. So flexibility, at least here in Atlanta from a working perspective, is really important.
Absolutely. Thank you. A couple more questions here. So the question is, how can someone improve their career path in the marketing industry, and particularly here in Atlanta, if they started somewhere else in the FinTech? So.
Sure. Well, I certainly could answer that question. So prior to FinTech, I was in technology, but I was actually at AT&T. But I was marketing technology solutions, mobile applications. So I think just like with any industry change, I think you look at what are your transferable skill sets, and I had to look at everything that I'd done. I think marketing becomes a science of both analytics as well as the ability to drive those results and make adjustments and look at ROI for your efforts. So I think if you can showcase that, regardless of what position you currently are in, I think it becomes, you have a very significant chance and opportunity to make that transition. But I think just with any career, not even just marketing, you have to be able to show what are those transferable skill sets.
Okay.
And network.
Very true. Yes, and network.
Question right here on the front. Yeah. So I'll just repeat again for the audience that's online. What are the requirements and training that are necessary to help you actually advance into the FinTech industry? Fast track, degrees, et cetera. So.
Sure, I can start. Well, I think, like we just talked about, right, there's not really degrees in FinTech, so most of us just learn on the job. So I think people are looking for people that are smart, can work with people, are willing to dig in, and are willing to learn on the fly and be a little bit nervous and be a little bit out on the edge every day, not knowing what you're being asked to do. The ETA, especially in parts of our business, the Electronic Transaction Association, does have a certification program. And like anything else these days, if you Google it, there's lots of infographics about Payments 101 and how does interchange work, and there's probably a lot that you can do just self-service wise, and probably impress people walking into an interview that things about our industry, because most people don't.
Right.
Yeah. And I think, too, it also goes back to function. What is it that you want to do? I think the industry is just kind of the layer on top of it. You know, you have to be passionate about whatever you're doing day to day. So whether it be marketing, whether it be, you know, IT or technology, there are certifications. I mean, you know, we live in a digital world. You can get just about any degree online at this point, or any certification online. So I think once you have that and you understand what's valuable to the potential employer, and you have that in hand walking in the door, I think the conversation becomes a little more easier. You feel a bit more confident because you know you have what they are looking for. But I would start there is what is it that you're really passionate about doing, and how can you self-certify, right, before you know, have that conversation about the opportunity.
I mean, most of us, and I mean, you know, Valera probably has a marketing degree, but I have a political science degree. And I know a lot of women, you know, that are executives in this industry that have liberal arts degrees. You know, one of the things about a liberal arts degree is you learn to learn, you know? And so that is key in this industry, because no one, you know, you walk in the door and you don't know. So if you're just really interested and curious and ask a lot of questions, you're going to do well in this industry. So I would say just read some books, you know, go online, go on LinkedIn and start following, and Twitter, and start following, you know, the different FinTech thought leaders. Oh my gosh, you'll learn so much so quickly just from doing that. And then, you know, if they recommend a book, FinTech Insider does a really good podcast. I was listening to a podcast on the way up, PayPod Canada, but there's amazing podcasts you can listen to on your commute. And I mean, 3 months you're going to be an expert. Yes. So
yes.
I was more asking for because
Tanya wanted to add.
And for ladies that have a degree, and for those folks that are interested in the industry, it's not necessarily industry specific what I'm going to say. So we talked about the confidence gap. Nicole had mentioned that earlier. And it's so know your worth and be uncomfortable with being uncomfortable. So we may not hit all of those boxes.
yeah.
Take the chance, because you never know when your opportunity is going to hit. You never know when you're going to meet that person that is going to say, I see something in you and I want to take you under my wing and I want to help you grow and develop personally and professionally. And I say that because it has happened to me. I know other folks that it has happened to. So be uncomfortable being uncomfortable. Take the chance.
Yeah. And I'll just add, just real briefly, just kind of what the ladies are saying about having that mindset of being very flexible. If you think about it, the phone that you have in your wallet is not the same phone that you had 5 years ago. So the world of technology is constantly evolving and it's constantly changing. So if you're in a FinTech organization, that technology is going to advance just that much. So there's not one certification or degree that you may have today that's going to sustain for 5 years from now. So it's going to be constantly. So you have to be very. And the ones who do not advance in their career very well, that do not advance, technical, just keep going.
Yep.
Tends to be the ones that are left behind. So having that mindset of fluidity is very, very, very important. So I hope that's very helpful to you. We have time for one more question. And it keeps going out. So please answer.
Sure. So we have a policy. We don't ever name our competitor, but I will. So the reason Featurespace is different, the big incumbent in the market, and if you're in this industry, you know it's FICO. So they've been doing fraud scoring for years and years and years, and quite successfully. I mean, that's why they're the leader in the market. And what Featurespace does is that's different. I mean, I sort of alluded to this earlier, but it's not to get too technical. I'm not technical, but the way that traditional scores have been done before is they take a lot of data, they take all of the bank's data and they mix it all up together and they say, okay, for the last 2 years, this has been the fraud trends. And so we know that, and that's what we're going to predict for the next 18 months. And so everybody's bank, they implement that, and that's what they use to protect their customers. But what Featurespace did is we said, well, that's too static, and we want to make sure that you can adjust to what's happening real time as people are transacting. And so, if I take Irene in the audience, and she's in North Atlanta today, but tomorrow, she might be visiting a TSYS office and in Tempe. well, Irene's not usually in Tempe, but at the end of the day, she's transacting in a hotel, and she might be, going to the hotel restaurant. And so we think that that's probably normal. And so we're profiling each individual customer and merchant and geographic location. And so we're building profiles based on that. And then when someone buys fur in Russia, that looks weird. And so, so that's kind of what FeatureSpace does well. And so I would say, FICO is the, very successful incumbent, and we're the little challenger.
Very good. We actually do have time for one more, so right here in the front. So the question, to paraphrase it, what has been the learning opportunity within your companies around data breaching and security, and how has that progressed up until this time?
I wasn't at TSIS in 2015, just so you know, but I do think that and there's a couple others in the room that I think would agree with me. I think PCI and security was more of a term, and we kind of all talked the talk and maybe didn't necessarily walk the walk. And coming out of some of those incidents was really the advent of security departments and chief security officers, and a lot of different education, not only within our industry. We talked a little bit about merchants and PCI security, and a real focus on education throughout the ecosystem. So pretty transformative. I mean, really whole new departments and whole new careers really came out of that.
Thank you. Well, this actually is going to start to conclude our time. I will just summarize. I hope you all, can we give these ladies a wonderful round of applause today? Aren't they fantastic? Thank you all so very much. Phenomenal job in sharing your wealth of experience with the audience here and those that are online in the world of FinTech and how we have progressed so much. And we still have a long way to go. But we have made tremendous strides, and it's opportunities like this that actually provide us with, and particularly with women, with the opportunity to feel confident, feel empowered, and feel that we have the support that we need in order to be progressive. So thank you all very, very, very much.
Thank you,
Absolutely.
Gail. Thank you.
Great job. Thank you.
Gift for you. Thank you so much.
I enjoyed it.
Oh, thanks, Miss Stephanie.
So ladies, oh my gosh, were they fabulous or what, right? And these are the ladies that handle all of our money. Oh, and isn't it? Okay, so thank you so much. Like, you're amazing. Please tell your friends. Please join our organization. We need women mentors like you to lift up the next generation of millennials. And y'all are a perfect example. We're the organization that you can come to be lifted up, and your opinion is valued here. So please come back the second Thursday of every month. Thank you, Cox Communications. We're so excited. Cox, LinkedIn, and Eris pay for all these events. We are going to have to start charging you ladies, but just get your companies to join our organization. And you get 24 events free a year with food and drinks. So, I mean, and look at the conversation. When you lift up women, does the conversation change?
Yes.
Whoop, whoop, whoop.
Yes.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you, LinkedIn. We appreciate everything you've done for us. And Eris is here tonight. Thank you, Eris. And again, follow us on our social media channels and join us here the second Thursday of every month. The third Thursday of every month, we're at Atlanta Tech Village, which is in Buckett. Okay, thank you, ladies. Thank you. Bless you.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you for coming.
Fun, I enjoyed it. So good. I enjoyed it.